A lot of the astronauts, they've signed papers not to talk. They have their retirements taken away. They're told to keep it quiet. And they're good Americans, too. I mean, it comes under the guise of national security.
The world-famous Tic Tac, a spacecraft, or a time machine from the future.
The fact that we see the Tic Tac form in 1960, 2004, 2014, 2015 indicates that it may be the same machine coming from the same point in time.
And a woman is filmed as she seems to teleport from her bed at 3 a.m.
And some believe that this is the time that aliens deliver us. It's when the world is at its quietest, and it's when we are at our most vulnerable.
UFOs, once the stuff of science fiction, now caught on camera, finally forcing governments to reveal what they know.
UAPs are unexplained, but they are real.
Many of these phenomena have been cited in training ranges. We're very much concerned about safety of flight.
So let's just speculate for one moment that these things, whatever they are here to do not very good things.
Impossible engineering, terrifying encounters, sinister cover-ups. This is evidence of the unexplained.
Following Houston, you're looking good here, right down the center line. Mark it, and you're looking very good. Roger.
February 2020. A mysterious conical object the size of a bus is filmed keeping pace with the International Space Station for 20 minutes. But NASA officials claim it is simply space junk, even though, finally, it seems to power away under its own control. 2 years later, on the 9th of June 2022, NASA, which has always dismissed talk of UFOs, seems to change its tune.
Welcome to today's media teleconference on a new independent scientific study that NASA is commissioning on unidentified aerial phenomena. They're the observations of events in the sky that cannot stop.
The North American Space Agency is now going to start studying them.
I want to first say that, of course, part of our task at NASA, given to us by Congress, is not only to do fundamental research in the skies and so forth, but as part of that also to find life elsewhere.
This excited journalist at the press conference asked the big question.
What's the budget NASA's allocated for this, and where is the funding coming from to support the study? Thanks.
How much of the agency's $24 billion budget is going to be allocated to this new work?
Let's speak about budget. So a budget, we would estimate is anywhere between a few tens of thousands of dollars, certainly no more than $100K.
$100,000 to study the world-changing possibility that a non-human intelligence is at work in the space around our planet. That's just above the average annual salary of one NASA worker.
Why does it seem like NASA is putting such a small percentage of its huge budget towards studying unidentified aerial phenomenon?
The tiny budget makes me wonder if NASA doesn't really value the problem enough to put the resources behind it that one would think they ought to.
Many of NASA's former workers claim the organization has deliberately kept the truth about UFOs from the public for decades.
My name is Donna Hare. During the 70s and 71, I worked in the Building 8 of NASA.
Donna Hare, now an award-winning illustrator, says she was a photographic technician at a private laboratory contracted by NASA in the 1970s.
I walked into a restricted area, which was not my company. It was the NASA Photo Lab. One of the gentlemen I had been friends with, he pointed my attention to one panel of a mosaic, which are several panels put together to form a larger picture. And these were either, I believe they were satellite pictures. I'm not sure. They were aerial, looking down. And I said, this is really interesting. He explained everything. And then he, with a smile on his face, he said, look over there. And I looked, and in one of the photo panels, I saw a round white dot. And at the time, it was very crisp, very sharp lines on it. And I said to him, what is that? Is that a dot on the emulsion? And then he's grinning and he says, dots on the emulsion don't leave round shadows on the ground.
She was told that space photographs were being doctored by NASA to hide UFOs before being released.
And I said, is this a UFO? He's smiling at me and he says, I can't tell you that. So I said, what are you going to do with this information? And he said, well, we always have to airbrush them out before we sell them to the public. And I was just amazed that they had a protocol in place for getting rid of UFO pictures.
She claims another NASA employee was forced by military personnel to burn a sheaf of UFO photographs, and another was hit with a rifle butt when he tried to take a look.
I started asking questions. Alone, they would tell me things and then swear if I ever said they said it, they would say I was lying. One gentleman that I knew very well was in quarantine with some of the astronauts. He said just about every one of them has seen things when they went to the moon that were, and in fact, one said that they were there. Craft were on the moon at that time.
Even more astonishingly, she says she was told that back in 1969, during the historic moon landings, a trio of UFOs followed the astronauts as they explored the surface of the moon. And this was relayed to her by an unnamed colleague who had been working with the astronauts during their quarantine period. She says that NASA codenamed this trio of UFOs Santa Claus, before then airbrushing them from all released images.
Donna also claimed that NASA employees who wanted to speak out were threatened with gagging orders and told that they would lose their pensions.
They've signed papers not to talk. They have their retirements taken away. A lot of the astronauts are told to keep it quiet, and they're good Americans too. I mean, it comes under the guise of national security.
It's a fantastical story, but her claims are echoed by photographic technician Sergeant Carl Wolf, who was working at Tactical Air Command at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia in the 1960s.
I was in the United States Air Force from 1964 until 1968.
He says he was asked to help out at the next-door National Security Agency, the NSA, who were bringing in information from the lunar orbiter. There, he says he was told by an NSA technician that they had found a base on the dark side of the moon.
We walked over to one side of the lab and he said, by the way, we've discovered a base on the back side of the moon. And I said, whose? What do you mean, whose? And then he pulled out one of these mosaics and showed this base, which had geometric shapes. There were towers, there were spherical buildings. There were very tall towers and things that looked somewhat like radar dishes, but they were large structures. I realized that he was telling me this information because he didn't have anybody else to talk to. And he had a high-level security clearance, obviously, but he couldn't share that information with anybody else. He was very distressed, and he needed to discuss it with somebody.
More than 600 humans have been into space since the first manned spaceflight in 1961. And many of these astronauts have returned with claims that we are not alone.
Edgar Mitchell, Gordon Cooper, and Jim McDivitt all said that they saw UFOs while they were in space.
Gordon Cooper was a pioneering astronaut, engineer, and test pilot who joined the US Air Force in 1949 and who, in 1963, made the longest spaceflight in history, orbiting the Earth 22 times in a Mercury space capsule.
Gordon Cooper says that his first sighting was in 1951, but years later, he came across another UFO.
This encounter wasn't in space, but at Edwards Air Force Base in California in 1957, when Cooper was a supersonic test pilot.
What he says is, I saw the vehicle set down, put down its landing gear and land. And then when we approached filming it, it took off again at a very great rate of speed. And was it similar to what you saw in 1951, he's asked? And he goes, yes, it was. It was a kind of double saucer. And this is a very good shape, he says, for traveling through Earth's atmosphere.
And even modern-day astronauts are starting to come forward and say there is more to the UFO phenomenon than had previously been acknowledged.
So on July the 13th, 2022, you have British astronaut Tim Peake going on air onto Good Morning Britain. He actually says, I think it's a really good thing that these discussions are being had. And he also says, I don't think it's a development of any state nation, not at all. And he also adds, it does seem extraordinary what these machines are capable of. There is no explanation for it.
And now, NASA's leader, former astronaut Bill Nelson, says he believes in the possibility of advanced extraterrestrials.
When asked what they could be, Nelson replies, who am I to say that planet Earth is the only location of a life form that is as civilized and organized as ours is? Now, that seems to be a very popular way that NASA employees have of framing the narrative.
In an interview with the Guardian newspaper in December 2021, Nelson said, "Do I think there's life in the universe? The answer is clearly I do, and we're searching for it." Nelson continued, "You've seen those films that have now been made public. They," talking about the Navy pilots, "know they saw something. Is it an adversary on Earth that has this technology? I hope not."
Perhaps they are spending just $100,000 on the new study because they already know the outcome.
Is this just a way of NASA bringing the public up to speed on something that they've known about for some time? And if that is the case, well, what is it they know?
NASA officials say that they initially want to find out which of these observations are natural phenomena so they can ensure the safety of U.S. aircraft. And crucially, NASA has also said that the results will be shared publicly as part of NASA's commitment to scientific integrity and openness.
Could this mean that for the first time, the full, unexpurgated files of UFO sightings by NASA astronauts could be made available? If the legendary space agency opens its vaults and tells us what it knows, it may really be one giant leap for mankind.
It does seem that there is a huge amount of information from NASA astronauts, whether in space or on Earth. So at what point does NASA come clean and tell us what's been seen on these missions? And what on earth does it all mean?
It's the most famous UFO encounter of the 21st century.
Well, look on the ASA. Look at that thing, dude. Well, that appears like anything.
But did US naval pilots off the coast of California on November the 14th, 2004 encounter alien spaceships or something else entirely? Perhaps a time machine. The pilots were flying F-18 fighter jets, Super Hornets, based on board USS Nimitz, an aircraft carrier off the coast of San Diego.
On November the 14th, they detect one of these anomalous aerial vehicles, and they track it descending from 80,000 feet to 20,000 feet in less than a second.
The Spy 1 radar only goes up to about 80,000 feet. Anything past that, it loses fidelity. So these things could have actually been coming in from low Earth orbit.
David Fravor and Lieutenant Alex Dietrich were both flying with a weapons systems officer in the back seat. Now what they see looks like a giant Tic Tac. It's about 40 feet long, and its movements are really quite erratic. And what's strangest of all is that the pilots and the systems officers can't see what is making this object fly. There is no obvious sign of propulsion or wings or anything like that.
Navy Commander David Fravor attempts to get closer to the object.
He kind of circles downwards towards it, and he says that that's when the Tic Tac, if you like, suddenly totally changes both position and direction. The most advanced human technology could not even begin to complete such a vast and total shift in movement. What's more alarming still, according to Fravor, is that the Tic Tac starts to climb up towards him, and he says it was as if it was mimicking his movements.
My gosh. We're going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
The so-called Tic Tac comes so close to Fravor, he says he thought it was preparing to engage. Then, all at once, the object vanished.
This encounter changed the whole conversation about UFOs. But had this particular craft turned up 50 years previously?
On April the 24th, 1964, outside Sirocco, New Mexico, police officer Lonnie Zamora sees a strange, very bright light off the desert road. He goes to investigate.
What Zamora claims is that he sees this oval object, and it looked like it was made out of aluminium or some kind of other metal.
It's uncannily similar in design to the so-called Tic Tac craft seen by the Navy pilots in 2004. And this time, occupants of the vehicle allegedly emerge.
Now, what he claims is that he sees these two humanoid figures disappear behind the oval object. And they were small, apparently, so he thought they were either short adults or tall children. And they were dressed in white overalls.
Then Zamora describes a loud sound coming from the oval object. It rose to hover about 20 to 30 feet in the air. And Zamora says it hung there noiselessly for a while before it moved off, also without any noise.
In science fiction, the occupants of UFOs are depicted as visitors from other worlds. But the nearest star known to have a planet is Proxima Centauri, over 4 light-years away. It would take 73,000 years to reach Earth by conventional spacecraft. The Pentagon is considering a more exotic possibility, that UFOs are actually travelers in time.
When we talk about UAPs and UFOs and time travelers and all that, we have to understand that we really don't understand time very well ourselves.
In his theory of relativity, Einstein theorized that the universe has 4 dimensions. The first 3 are spatial, and the 4th, of course, is time. And together they form space-time, or the space-time continuum, which actually defines all our physical reality.
Albert Einstein believed that our physical reality might have holes in it, passageways through time that with advanced technology it might be possible to access.
Many scientists and astronomers believe that wormholes are all around us. They're very, very tiny. If you look very closely at anything, you'll see tiny holes or wrinkles. Take something as smooth and solid-looking as a pool ball. If you look closely enough, you'll see there are holes. It's easy for us to see this in the first 3 dimensions, but it's true of the 4th as well. There are holes and wrinkles in time.
If this is how UFOs are traveling, it could explain the seemingly bizarre movements of the craft seen by Zamora and the pilots of the Nimitz.
This would explain the Tic Tac's ability to appear and disappear, both from sight and radar. They are entering and exiting our dimension, not moving within it.
Professor Michael P. Masters of Montana University believes these craft might have the ability to travel through time.
One indication that these craft are time machines is that we see the same versions of them in different periods. The fact that we see the Tic Tac form in 1960, 2004, 2014, 2015 indicates that it may be the same machine coming from the same point in time.
And he has concluded that accounts of occupants add weight to this theory. Masters has studied the description of the humanoids given by Lonnie Zamora and others who have claimed to witness occupants in or around a UFO.
So one of the traits that characterizes human evolution is we have neoteny or paedomorphosis, where you have the retention of normalized traits into adulthood. So for instance, we look more like the childlike form of chimpanzees, which are our closest living relative on this planet. And what's interesting is very commonly these UFO occupants, these visitors, are described as being very childlike or having traits that have been compared to a fetus, fetal-like characteristics. And it's just one of many things that would seem to indicate that there's genetic continuity between us and them. So rather than being from outside of Earth, they come from outside of time.
One apparent problem with this theory is that descriptions of the occupants of UFOs vary. But Masters answers that too. He proposes that we are seeing craft and beings coming from different time periods in the future.
A global study done by the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation sampled over 3,500 individuals, asking them about their contact experiences. And what they found is the majority of people saw humans, not humanoid or gray aliens, but actual humans. And that might indicate that we could be coming back from a more proximate point in our future, possibly as early as 100 or 200 years.
In a century or two's time, the Earth could be a very different place to the planet we inhabit now. Why, if these mysterious craft are from the future, are they so interested in the 20th and 21st centuries? What is it about Earth in this time period which so fascinates them? The answer could be unsettling.
What's worrying some spectators is the volume of UFO sightings in this time period. Does it presage some coming cataclysm? Are these visitors coming not to stop it, but to observe it? Now, to some people, the idea of UFOs being piloted by humans of a kind might be comforting. I don't know. To me, it's the most unsettling scenario of all.
In the historic English spa town of Droitwich in Worcestershire in December 2010, a woman tells her husband an incredible story.
A woman believes that she's being regularly abducted by aliens in the early hours of the morning from her bed.
So her husband didn't really believe her, but she was really frightened to go to sleep. So as somebody who works with security cameras for a living, he said, right, okay, we're gonna set up a camera, and when you fall asleep, we'll film you, and we'll show you that nothing's happening to you at night.
It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it, if your wife is saying to you, hey, I was abducted last night. But he set up the camera in the room.
The woman's husband hoped the footage would show nothing and reassure her she had nothing to fear. But when they watched it back, they were both in for a shock.
The night vision footage is pretty clear. There's nothing obstructing our view of the bed, and we can see the woman, and she appears to be sleeping under a sheet on it. We can see her moving every once in a while. We can also see her husband sleeping next to her to the left of the screen.
And so far, so good. It's just his wife sleeping. Absolutely nothing out of the ordinary taking place.
But as the clock hits 3:34 a.m., that all changes.
You can see her under the covers. She's moving around. And then suddenly, it looks as if she's arching her back. And the bed covers just swallow her up. They go flat. And she's gone.
How her husband must have reacted to this footage, I can't imagine. His heart must have been in his throat.
There's no doubt she vanishes. And people don't just disappear like that. Nobody is seen walking into the room. And there's just her husband to the left of the camera. But suddenly, he's alone in the room.
13 minutes later, according to the clock on the film, the woman reappears.
Suddenly, you see the sheets on her side of the bed sort of inflate. You can see that the disturbance has caused her husband to stir a little bit, and she's just back there sleeping.
Looking at the time code on the camera, her reappearance is at 03:46. So the question is, where had she been for the previous 13 minutes?
The woman and her husband turned to Birmingham-based UFO investigator David Hodrian in search of answers.
A point that was noted by Hodrian was that at no point did the couple seem to seek publicity or money, for that matter, for their footage, and that convinced him that in all likelihood it was genuine.
The footage was also analyzed by an American television series that looks at photos and videos for signs of fakery. They were unable to recreate the footage without resorting to hidden contraptions.
The footage is extraordinary, but the claim of abduction by a non-human intelligence is surprisingly common.
One study carried out by 2 American professors questioned nearly 6,000 people about their experiences with alien abduction.
The study concluded that around 3.7 million American adults report having been abducted by aliens at some point in their lives. Many in a room surrounded by alien-looking creatures.
The appearance of evil-looking figures at the foot of the bed and the sensation of unwanted molestation while paralyzed or restrained has been linked to a phenomenon called sleep paralysis. It's a medical condition in which the mind and body become detached from each other in the moments just before sleep.
Some skeptics have suggested that alien abductions actually come down to the subject's pre-sleep activities. So, for example, having watched a movie or read a book on an alien subject.
In a study conducted by a researcher in England on sleep paralysis, the subject had watched an alien movie before going to bed, and in that state of sleep paralysis, imagine that an alien was there with them, inserting a metal probe into their head.
Sleep paralysis probably does explain a lot of these encounters, but this video of a woman seemingly vanished from her bed for 13 minutes, that's a bit harder to explain.
No matter how strongly one might believe that sleep paralysis is the cause for some of these experiences of alien abduction, what we have, though, in the case of the Droitwich woman, is outright vanishing.
And the time that this apparent vanishing was caught on camera could be significant too.
Professor Gary Nolan of the Stanford University School of Medicine has found that most of these reported alien abductions happen between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning, and that is a time when most of us are fast asleep. It's a time that's been known as the witching hour since the Middle Ages, and some believe that this is the time that aliens deliberately choose to interact with us. It's when the world is at its quietest, and it's when we are at our most vulnerable.
Many people who claim to have been abducted by aliens say they have been subjected to degrading examinations, surgical procedures, and even sexual contact before being returned. Harvard University professor John E. Mack, who died in 2004, believed many of these abduction experiences were not the result of fantasies inspired by science fiction movies or comics, but were real.
Mack is a prominent and outspoken defender of the possibility of alien abductions. And he says that books, media, TV shows, that sort of thing can't be responsible for all alien abduction experiences, given that some of them come from areas where people really aren't exposed to that kind of material.
No natural explanation has ever been established for the woman's mysterious disappearance from her bed. And as we know, if you eliminate all which is impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
As things stand, we still have no answers to what happened to this woman. So we have to ask the question, what happened for those 13 minutes? Where did she go? And what was done to her?
If this isn't a hoax of some kind, what we need to start thinking about maybe is, where are people being taken in the middle of the night, and why?
Maybe the reality is that the dead of night holds more terrors and more secrets than we're prepared to admit.
Is there a secret deal between our world leaders and the entities who pilot UFOs? It seems an outlandish possibility, but in December 2020, Chaim Eshed, who had been the head of Israel's space program for the country's defense ministry for over 30 years, says it's true.
Chaim Eshed is a former general and aeronautics expert and regarded as the godfather of the nation's space program.
In an interview in Hebrew with an Israeli newspaper, Eshed said the UFOs have asked not to reveal that they're here. He said, quote, "Humanity is not ready yet."
He claimed that the occupants of UFOs had struck a secret and sinister agreement with leaders on Earth.
Eshed says that they are very interested in the fabric of the universe and that they're being allowed to conduct secret experiments.
He says that when Donald Trump was president, that he was going to reveal the truth, but he was prevailed upon not to because it would have resulted in mass hysteria.
After the interview was published, the press clamored for Eshed to reveal more, but he fell silent.
Eshed's successor at the agency is a man called Isaac Ben Israel, and he says that Eshed went too far. And actually, he also added it was unlikely that human-alien encounters are occurring.
Could such a brilliant man be mistaken or even deluded? Or did he accidentally reveal a sinister bargain, long rumored, to have been struck between the US government under President Eisenhower in the 1950s to keep the existence of UFOs secret until the world was ready to hear it?
Dwight D. Eisenhower, of course, was this huge colossus. He was a decorated army general. He'd been supreme commander of Allied forces during the Normandy invasion until the German surrender in 1945.
By the time of his inauguration in 1953, Eisenhower was a 5-star general, so possibly the man you want in charge if there's an alien invasion in the offing.
Eisenhower entered the White House in 1953. It is said by some his most extraordinary act as president occurred on February the 20th, 1954.
The exact events of February 20th, 1954 aren't clear. All we know is that Eisenhower made a late-night trip from Palm Springs, California.
Some people believe that President Eisenhower went to Edwards Air Force Base in New Mexico that night, and that he went there to meet with 2 extraterrestrials.
Why would Eisenhower do this? UFOs have been appearing over American territory since the Kenneth Arnold sighting in 1947. And in 1952, there seems to have been an extraordinary escalation.
Washington National Radar apparently detects these objects flying over the White House and Capitol. And 2 F-94 jets immediately set out in hot pursuit, but every time they get close, the objects apparently disappear from radar detection.
The story made headlines across the U.S. UFOs over Washington. The Korean War, the presidential campaign, those were completely forgotten. Now, the armed forces tried to minimize the story as much as possible, and the official line was that this was a weather event.
But behind the scenes, these events have been taken really quite seriously. And in December, the government convenes a panel of experts who have been told there is, quote, something going on that must have immediate attention.
Some UFO investigators believe this was the catalyst for a secret presidential meeting.
At this meeting, it's said that Eisenhower made a peace deal with the extraterrestrials. It was supposed to stop an alien invasion of Earth, in return for which Eisenhower agreed that the aliens would be able to secretly abduct and study human beings, provided they were returned unharmed.
But White House officials insist the president had an appointment with his dentist that day, not 2 extraterrestrial ambassadors.
And the Dwight D. Eisenhower Library in Kansas also maintains that the president went to the dentist that very night. And so does James M. Mixon. He too is a dentist and a historian of presidential dental work. And he says that Ike certainly had work done on his crown.
A dental appointment seems far more likely than a secret interplanetary deal.
How could such a secret be kept? Why would politicians, military figures, why would they agree to keep such a world-changing secret secret?
You've got a man called Michael Salla. He's a former American university professor, and he believes that Eisenhower went to the Edwards Air Force Base in New Mexico that night. And he also believes that he went there to meet with 2 extraterrestrials.
Michael Salla suggests the consequences of revealing the secret were too dire. The threat of invasion or total destruction by an advanced technology. And high-level bizarre revelations, like Chaim Eshed's claim that a secret deal has been done, now seem to be emerging from the shadows.
Maybe there was a reason to keep this super secret in the past, but times have changed. Now is the time that we need to talk about this.
November 2018, the southwest desert of the United States. Over 95,000 square miles of arid and sparsely inhabited land. It's America's front line.
Star Longbow 281 lane 4, request west slopes.
Near midnight on November 6th, a U.S. military Apache helicopter is preparing for takeoff near the Mexican-American border.
Are those 3 really fast-flying jets up there? Probably some A-10s or some F-16s.
One of the 2 men on board spots 3 unidentified objects in the distance.
The camera captures flying objects speeding at about 1.3 times the speed of sound. That's more than 900 miles an hour.
The Apache helicopter is equipped with a pilot night vision sensor, which is used typically to track nighttime gang-related activity or illegal immigrants. And that's what enables the camera to track the dots at such high speed.
Over 1.5 million people attempt to cross the border into America here every year. And drugs worth over $50 million are sent into the United States every single week. The people who profit from these narcotics will stop at nothing to get their product into the country.
Mexico's drug barons are among the wealthiest people in the world. The notorious El Chapo Guzman alone was worth an estimated $2.3 billion.
So, it stands to reason to think that maybe a man like that would have the money to invest in the very latest tech to get all those drugs across the border.
But even the fastest narco drones, as they're called, can't travel at the kinds of speeds logged in this video. These craft could instead be a secret part of the American government's fight back against the billionaire narco drug lords.
So for years there have been many theories and conspiracies that a lot of these UFO sightings are actually examples of unseen US technology.
This part of Southwest America is very sparsely populated desert. It's the perfect place to conduct secret tests away from the public eye.
There's been a lot of talk, conspiracy theories of secretive US military bases such as Area 51 being used for far more than just military training. Now, of course, a lot of people have heard of Area 51, but actually there's a far less known secret base called Area 6. So when a mile-long runway is added to Area 6 in 2005, that only fuels the intrigue and just increases the question.
Eventually, in 2016, National Nuclear Security Administration spokesman Darwin Morgan said the site is used to test unmanned aircraft away from the public eye and to avoid being spied on in space. So could these objects have come from the Area 6 base? If so, the US has developed a highly unusual craft, exhibiting unprecedented aerodynamic maneuverability.
As the objects approach a peak, they begin to rotate around each other, almost as if they're rotating on an axis. They're doing this at incredibly high speeds. Their movements are extraordinary. It's like they're performing.
There aren't, to my knowledge, any craft capable of motion like that. So unless the US government is keeping something seriously quiet, I'm really not sure what we're seeing here.
And then the three objects get even weirder.
We then see these objects appearing to form a triangle, and they're moving at incredibly fast speeds. You know, how they don't collide, I've no idea. At Mach 1.28, which is around 980 miles an hour, that's a speed that many human-built fast jets are capable of. It's not exceptional, this speed, but what our human-built craft can't do, to the best of our knowledge, is move like that.
It's almost as though they have been spotted and are showing off for the camera. This behavior doesn't just seem intentional and intelligent. It seems to follow a pattern scientists have discovered in the movement of living creatures.
There's something about the movement of these objects that scientists find absolutely fascinating, because they seem to be moving in a pattern that's called levy flight. Levy flight is related to chaos theory, and it's been found that the movement of living things is similar to the movement of inert objects that are moving seemingly at random.
Sharks, the apex predators of our oceans, have to eat as much as 3% of their own body weight each meal just to survive. Marine biologists have observed a shift in the behavior of sharks. Their movements change. They become levy flights, long trajectories followed by short random movements, specifically when they're hungry.
There was a study in 1999 that analysed 12 million movements over 15 years, and that showed that numerous marine predator species, like sharks, use levy flight movements when seeking food. And this is not the movement or behaviour of machines or piloted machines. This is the movement of something that looks as if it could be alive.
But no known living creature in our skies is capable of maneuvers like those captured by the footage filmed over the arid landscape of the southwestern United States in November 2018. Science fiction movies have sold us the idea that UFOs are some kind of transportation device, a futuristic type of spaceship. But that could be a disguise. Mathematician and UFO investigator Jacques Vallée says he has investigated a case where a woman and her family saw a metallic disc above their car. They caught it on camera, but the resulting photo, which he says he saw, didn't show a disc, but a strange spiky object, perhaps some kind of creature cloaking itself to human eyes.
You've got to ask, you know, some of these mysterious objects we see in the sky and the things that we call UFOs, I mean, could they be life forms?
This particular form of travel has been spotted by many pilots who've encountered UFOs. Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot who encountered UAPs off the coasts of Virginia and Florida in 2014, described their movement as jittery, not smooth like a conventional aircraft.
Another pilot describes the UFO he encountered as moving like a housefly.
If these objects are in some ways living entities, mimicking the levy flight of some of our natural predators, we perhaps have to rethink why they're here and what it is they want.
What a levy flight movement pattern suggests is that these objects are not following a predetermined course, but are exploring, rather like an animal scoping an area for food.
Living creatures, machines, or some kind of combination of the two. Sightings like the one captured by the helicopter on the arid border could provide a clue to the true nature of the phenomenon, but as yet, they raise more questions than answers.
What you feel about a UFO and their intentions and where they're from and who's behind the wheel, we don't have that data yet.
We may not have it yet, but such is the increasing number of UFO sightings. It surely won't be long before we do.